Hi and welcome to the second of my blog blasts. It's taken slightly longer than I would have hoped or expected between the first and this one, but as they say, the best land play, or even they say the best laid plans of mice and men. My offline work has gone absolutely ballistic, which is great obviously, but it has meant that other things have slipped. Anyway, here now. And the reason I wanted to record this is that I sent an email to my list today regarding what I regard is the key to success online, if not the key to success in life in general, and that is that persistence pays. It all came about because a client of mine that I'm helping, he purchased one of my done for you sales funnels, and we set it up, and now we're in communication because he's taken ownership and he wants to tweak it slightly, so that he's going to use it in a slightly different way to that it was originally designed. However, unfortunately, he hit one or two little issues with his autoresponder, and so I've been communicating with him, and we're working on trying to get that sorted. Still an ongoing process at the moment, but the important thing was that he persisted. I know of many people, and I've seen them in the past, where at the first experience of problems or trouble, they just throw their hands up in the air and say, well, stuff this for a game of soldiers, I'm off. And that's probably because in this day and age, quite rightly, we've tried to ensure that people have an easier life as possible. We try to make sure that people don't suffer, don't have to struggle. And as I say, that's a good thing on the whole. Unfortunately, I think what can happen is it can make us soft, so that when we do experience those challenges that do come about, we perhaps don't always have the wherewithal to actually do something about it. As I say, in the example of the client I'm working with, his mentality has been, well, this is a challenge that I need to overcome, and so he's now putting all his efforts, rather than complaining and whining and whinging, he's putting all his efforts into overcoming the problem. And in my mind, that indicates a good chance of someone who's going to be a success in the long term. This idea of persistence, about doing the right things often enough and you will get that success, I can relate to wholeheartedly. I'm ashamed to say that I probably spent the best part of 5 years trying to build an online business and not making a brass farthing. In fact, every month my business was costing me money. Now you might say, well, okay Andy, what's the magical little thing that made the difference? Well, to be honest, there was no magical element. It's just that I kept on doing the right things. Those 5 years, all the time I was doing stuff, predominantly it was failing, but I was learning, and whether it be consciously or unconsciously, that seeped through what doesn't work and also what does work. And the longer you get on, the longer you go on, the more of the right stuff that you do. So if you currently are struggling, perhaps you're wandering around not making money, let me just give you a pat on the back to say, well done that you're trying, and keep at it. Ultimately, we don't fail until we quit. If we keep going, there's always a chance that we can turn it around. And as long as you are doing the right things, if you're building a list, you're communicating with that list, then in the long term it will come right. I actually printed off a few examples of how persistence fails that I thought were quite interesting. Here's my list here. So the first one, John Grisham. I love John Grisham's work. I've read many of his books, and he's apparently sold over 275 million copies of his books. But were you aware that his very first manuscript was actually refused, was rejected 28 times? 28 times before someone actually took the risk of going with John Grisham. And we all know what's happened since then. A tremendous success. Michael Jordan. Now I'm from the UK. I'm not big into basketball, but I do know of Michael Jordan. Most people on the planet know Michael Jordan. However, did you know that he failed to make his varsity team in the high school? They thought he was too short. But he kept on keeping on, and well, the rest is history. Winston Churchill, perhaps someone closer to home in the UK. Our Prime Minister throughout the Second World War, an inspirational leader, and yet he actually finished last in his class at school. And I quote him here: he once described success as being able to go from one disaster to another without any loss of enthusiasm. And that really does sum it up. Bill Gates, here we go, Bill Gates, one of the richest men in the world. He dropped out of Harvard and failed at his first business. Just imagine, you know, if he'd thought, stuff it, Microsoft, the fortune he made through Microsoft would never have worked. But he carried on, he kept on keeping on. Colonel Sanders, he was in his 70s when he first started hawking around his Southern Fried Chicken recipe. He was rejected, catch it, over 1,000 times. That's a man who deserved his success. He kept on keeping on. The final one, Walt Disney, which again we all know. Before he created his billion-dollar enterprise, he was an illustrator who was fired by his local newspaper and told he lacked imagination and had no good ideas. All of those great examples of people who could quite easily have just held their hands up and said, you know what, I'm going to get a 9-to-5 job. But they never would have reached where they were. My example, obviously I can't even suggest I'm anywhere near those guys, but in a much smaller scale, that's exactly where I am. If I, when I was going through those 5 years of failure, had said, do you know what, 9-to-5 jobs for me, I wouldn't have been able to go and see my children's sports days and nativity plays and presentations, etc. I wouldn't have been able to do the charity work I do at my local hospital. A whole bunch of stuff that I wouldn't have been able to do. So please, I'm nothing special, as you've probably seen from these videos. But all I've done is kept on doing the right things. So my suggestion, my request of you is, if you're currently struggling, if you're currently thinking, is this the right thing for me? Keep on keeping on, and one day I'm sure you'll be making these videos, and hopefully you'll be encouraging other people. So that's the second one, done and dusted. Hope it's been of help, and here's hoping that the gap between this one and the next one won't be so long. So have a great day, and I'll speak to you soon.